Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 34. The next morning, I went to the big house to have breakfast with Daphne. She was all aflutter, probably because of the full dress rehearsal scheduled for that evening. After a perfunctory greeting, she said, "Parker told me you got in safely last night." "Yes," I said. "Long before midnight, too, so my magic coach remained a roadster." "How is the car running?" she asked. "Any problems?" "None at all. In fact, Daphne, I apologize for my recent behavior. Without your generosity and the car, I wouldn't have been able to run off the way I did. I feel like a brash adolescent." Daphne laughed heartily, a positive sign that we might be back on friendly terms. "It's no wonder you fled," she said. "I've been a meddlesome old hen. I hope you'll forgive an old woman's maternal weakness." "On the contrary, I welcome it." "Oh, good," she said, "because I have some awful news and I need a willing ear." Then Daphne told me of a grave disappointment she'd suffered the day before, when she discovered that a particular shawl she had intended to buy as part of her opening night ensemble had been purchased by someone else. "I always make the same mistake when I see something I like," she said. "I hesitate, and then when I go back, it's gone." Her eyes drooped sadly. "I'd already had the gown made, too, a perfect complement for the shawl, and now the shawl's gone. I suppose it was silly of me to plan my outfit around an accessory that I hadn't bought yet." "Not at all," I said, but I realized what had happened. I had bought the shawl that Daphne had wanted, knowing that a happy ending would result when I gave it to her. I could offer her breezy advice. "I'm sure something just as nice will turn up." "Oh, it's impossible. This one was a work of art, a one-of-a-kind thing. You've never seen anything like it." "Oh, yes, I had, and it was sitting in the cottage beautifully wrapped and waiting for Daphne to receive it." She asked about the day's schedule ahead of me. I told her I had the rest of the morning and the early afternoon free. I wanted to be at the Opera House by 3 o'clock. "So early? For an 8 o'clock curtain?" she said. "I want to feel at home by the time the curtain goes up." Daphne chortled. "But you're not even performing." "I am in a way. My work will be on stage even if I'm not. And the wig still needs some work before opening night." "How would you like to visit Maurizio with me this morning?" She suggested that I should drive us both there in the Alpha. Actually, I think she wanted an excuse to ride in it, which was fine with me. After a few days of zooming around Abigail in that peppy roadster, I wasn't too eager to be a passenger again, crawling, meandering, drifting along in Daphne's Bentley. So the plan was she would direct me to Parker's daughter's place where Maurizio was staying, and I would drive us. But I soon found that Daphne's navigating skill was as faulty as her ability to direct a vehicle under her own command. Partly she was fascinated with the Alpha's instrumentation, and partly she was enjoying the scenic ride too much. As a result, her directions usually began with, "Oh dear, I think you were supposed to," and then would follow whichever step of our route we had already missed. But we did arrive finally at Parker's daughter's cottage, which was located on a neck of land that formed one side of a cove along Abigail's northern shore. Parker's daughter was in her kitchen preparing hundreds of hors d'oeuvres for a reception she was catering that night. Even her small enterprise was benefiting from the opportunities provided by the opera festival. She told us Maurizio was resting outside on the back porch. Daphne and I went out there and found him reclining on a chaise lawn, basking in the late afternoon sun. He was wearing light cotton clothing and a straw sun hat, so that only his hands were directly exposed to the sun. He sensed our presence immediately and sat up. It was good to see him bright-eyed and alert again. Daphne greeted him in their private sign language, and I greeted him with a hearty two-fisted handshake. I had the urge to hug him too, but I could tell by the way he moved that his injury still hurt him. The three of us sat there for a few moments, smiling happily, while Daphne and I made affectionate little get-well gestures to Maurizio. Then Daphne spoke slowly and clearly to him. "The police arrested Jonathan Byers." Maurizio nodded energetically. He explained something to Daphne, and she turned to me and translated. He says it was Jonathan Byers who attacked you and then hurt him that night outside the cottage. I said, how does he know? Maurizio's translated reply. He was wearing a leather jacket. That's not enough, I said to Daphne. Did he see his face? I turned directly to Maurizio and said it to him. Did you see his face? He shook his head no. I asked, what about his hair? He signed something to Daphne and she translated. Light colored, she said. Orange, I asked, or yellow? Maurizio didn't know, but he seemed afraid to disappoint me, so he explained to Daphne that it was dark when they were struggling as he didn't get a good look at my attacker. That's all right, I said. Neither did I. Then Maurizio added that the attacker had worn gloves. Gloves, I said. Or gauntlets. Maurizio looked baffled. I mimed the shape of gigantic gloves on my wrist, then clenched my fist and puffed up my chest like a He-Man. Big gloves, I said. Macho tough. Maurizio nodded wildly and made a loud nasal grunt. Apparently Jonathan Byers had worn the gauntlets when he attacked me. Oh dear, said Daphne. I was hoping for evidence to the contrary. Why would Sir Jonathan want to hurt me? I said. It doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't, said Daphne. Is that why you wanted to come here? I said, to find out for sure. I confess, she said with a defeated nod. That was my secondary, though no less important motive for visiting Maurizio this morning. Maurizio looked alarmed, as though he had said something wrong. No, my dear, Daphne said soothingly. She put her hand on his forearm. You have been very helpful. Now, you get well. Do you understand? Maurizio nodded. I nodded too, as if to fortify Daphne's order. Then she and I got up to leave, but Maurizio pulled me close to him for a hug. I could smell the antiseptic dressing on his wounds, but I could also smell his body's sylvan warmth mingled with the brisk ocean air. It was similar to the complex scent I often noticed around Lieutenant Branco. I sensed a little commotion in my nether regions, and I pulled back from Maurizio's embrace. Then Daphne and I left him to recuperate some more in the warm sun. I drove us back to the estate where Parker had a message for me. Nicole would be arriving on the afternoon train alone. I had hoped that she and Branco would have driven out to Abigail together, especially since I had new evidence against Jonathan Byers that I wanted to tell the cop. When I went to meet Nicole at the train station, I learned why she'd come alone.
Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.